What you know, alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Wednesday, August 27th, day 4 of the Donna Adelson trial, currently underway. Before we jump in, one thing Prosecutor Dugan brought up to Sergeant Corbett, who is still currently on the stand, by the way, is that law enforcement did not know about that June trip they took to Tallahassee until Rivera told them. We're looking at cell phone pings and text messages and things like that this morning. In an email, June 25th, 2013 at 11 p.m., this is the same day Donna emailed Wendy they needed a plan of action. Donna emails some friends. Not in the mood to talk right now. I hope you'll understand. Wendy's hearing for relocation was denied. No chance at the appellate level. We're all very disappointed. We'll talk soon, I promise. Love, Donna. I think this goes back to her defense attorney saying that Donna was unaware it had been denied and that Wendy didn't tell her. So moving on to Rivera's statements. He told law enforcement in 2016 that they traveled to Tallahassee in June and July. The witness was able to verify that from the phone records, so they go through records for that June trip. There were no phone location records for Sigfredo on this trip. The car they rented for that first trip was a silver Nissan Altima. The rental was from June 2nd to June 5th, and that was rented at 8:50 p.m. and signed by Garcia. Phone records from Katie's phone shows that she obviously traveled with Sigfredo to drop him off to get the car rental because it shows her near the airport and the car rental place. So the communication timeline during the car rental between 8:25 to 11:28 p.m. On the way, Katie talked to Geico. Charlie to Katie at 8:57 p.m. This is at the time Katie was at the rental car place. At 9:17 p.m., there was a call from Katie to Charlie that lasted 25 minutes and 27 seconds. Less than a minute after hanging up with Charlie, Charlie calls the Adelsons' landline, and that duration is for 25 minutes. At 10 p.m., there's communication between Katie and Sigfredo. 10:16 to 10:21, Harvey calls Charlie. 10:27 to 10:30, Charlie calls Harvey. At 10:30, Katie sends a text to Sigfredo. 10:41, Katie to Charlie. They talk for 23 minutes. That ends at 11:04 p.m. He points out in 2016, when the wiretap calls were being recorded, Charlie starts to tell people on his cell phone that he will call them back on a landline. There's a perception, obviously, that talking on a landline versus a cell phone is safer if you're doing criminal activity. Charlie mainly talks to Donna and Harvey on their cell phones, but they also note at key times Charlie will call the landline. But the percentage of calls that Charlie made to Harvey and Donna, as far as cell versus landline, there were 1,378 contacts between them on cell phones, and that made up 98.1% of the communication. For the landline, there were 28 contacts, making that 1.9%. After leaving the rental car place, Sigfredo got a citation. That was June 2nd, 2014 at 9:48 p.m., just within an hour after leaving the rental area. That obviously created a law enforcement record that he was in possession of the car. After he got the ticket, he returned that car, then rented a blue Hyundai Sonata. They point out Jeff Lacasse also drove a silver sedan. June 4th, 2014, they talk about the cell site pings for Rivera. He starts off in the Miami area, and then after noon, he is traveling from Miami to Tallahassee. Rivera told law enforcement they did surveillance of Dan at a park near his house. His phone pings were consistent with being at Winthrop Park, which is right by Mr. Markel's house. Then they show cell phone pings from Tallahassee back to Miami. They start that trip back on June 5th at 3:25 p.m., and then they arrive back in Miami June 6th at 12:47 a.m. They move to the communications between the co-conspirators during the first trip, June 2nd through the 4th of 2014. For communications between the parties, Donna and Charlie talk 7 times. Charlie and Harvey talk once. Donna and Harvey talk once. Donna and Wendi twice. 2 of those are from Donna's cell phones and then 1 from the landline. Wendi and Harvey, as well as Wendi and Charlie, talk once. Charlie and Katie, 17 times. Katie and Sigfredo 15 times, Sigfredo and Rivera once, and then Katie and Rivera once. And Charlie obviously is the only Adelson who talks to Katie. They go back to a text where Donna texts Charlie about erasing that text message. We went over that yesterday. They point out that she does not ask him to delete the text about Harvey's birthday gift. And they bring in a text from June 7th, 2014 from Charlie to Donna. It says, "Okay, have fun. Still working on Dad's birthday present. Donna says, I know it's a tough birthday, being 70 and all, but I know you'll come through." And she puts a thumbs up emoji as well as a kissy face emoji. And she ends that with Mom. They also mention that a birthday present for Harvey was mentioned in March, which was 4 months before his actual birthday. They move on to that July 3rd Evite for Harvey's birthday. It was a reminder sent to Wendy, and it was addressed to her and the boys. It says, "Friendly reminder, Donna's event is coming up on Saturday, July 5th, 2014 at 7:30 p.m. Your current response is yes." They note that the boy's last name on this Evite is listed as Adelson, even though Dan is still alive. This is approximately 2 weeks before he was killed. July 6th, the day after Harvey's party, Wendy texts Dan, "Are you in Tallahassee July 14th through the 18th? I just want to know if I can have the kids on the 16th. Thanks." Dan says, "Yes, you can." Wendy was still in South Florida when that text was sent, and her ping shows she would have been at Donna and Harvey's condo. Moving on to the time frame around the murder. July 15th, they rent the car. July 16th through the 18th, Sigfredo and Rivera are in Tallahassee, with Dan being shot on the 18th. The schedule for who would have had the kids in the dates that Wendy asked for is brought in. They bring in an email where Dan is listed to have those kids the 11th through the 17th. Wendy makes a calendar entry on July 7th to cancel the cable and get Apple ID and Netflix instead. The prosecutor points out you can stream cable anywhere to where, if you have cable at your home that's fixed, obviously you can't pick it up and take it with you. And they point out the following month, Wendy was back in Miami after Dan was killed. Going back to July 11th, 2014, there is an email from Donna to Wendy about Best Buy. Donna referred to Harvey in the third person by saying that the contract is in Dad's name. Now, the night before they rent the car for the final trip on July 14th, Charlie and Katie were together that night. And we go through a summary of communications. 8:53 p.m., Charlie calls Katie, and then there is a text at 8:56, "Tried to call you." Katie tells Charlie to come to her house, and Charlie responds, "His ETA is 5 minutes." At 9:27 p.m., Charlie pings at Katie's residence. 12:42 a.m., Charlie is leaving Katie's house and arrives home at 1:02 a.m. After that, Katie contacts Sigfredo. July 15th, between 12:48 a.m. and 1:56 a.m., Katie makes several contacts to Sigfredo. The next morning, Sigfredo calls the rental car company that he used back in June. But at 4:28 p.m., he calls another rental car company, and that is where they ultimately rent the Prius from. They also note that Sigfredo is in contact with Rivera and Katie that day. The out time for the car rental is 6:15, and both Sigfredo and Rivera's phones are in the same area as the rental car location. While the car was being rented, Katie and Charlie are playing phone tag. At 6:36 p.m., Charlie and Katie talk for 10 minutes. 7:30 p.m., Charlie to the Adelson landline for 22 minutes. At 7:54 p.m., there is another 11-minute call to that landline. Call records show that there is a call from Harvey to the landline, and he would not have been home, so that proves it was Charlie and Donna talking. There was one call to the landline in June after the car rental, and then 2 calls to the landline right after that July car rental. So those key times there, using that landline. After the car is rented on July 15th, there are a number of attempts between Katie and Sigfredo to contact each other. Those end at 9:30 p.m. And at 9:30, Sigfredo's cell phone pings near Katie's house. The GPS from the Prius also confirms this. July 16th, 1:42 p.m., Sigfredo and Rivera leave the Miami area. And at 1:10 a.m., they arrive in Tallahassee. July 17th starts the surveillance of Dan. At 11:47 a.m. and 2:30 p.m., they ping at the park near Dan's home. Now, the call summary between the very late hours of July 17th into the early morning hours of July 18th. Between 10:18 p.m. and 1:03 a.m., there are some calls attempted. Some may be texts, some may be mundane, but they really didn't spend a lot of time on this. 10:18 p.m., Charlie to Donna. That call, 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Then at 10:29 p.m., Charlie to Donna for 4 minutes and 14 seconds. At 11:40 p.m., there are contact attempts from Katie to Sigfredo, and they finally connect at 10:41 and talk for 10 minutes. At 11:54 p.m., there is a text from Sigfredo to Katie, and then at 12:01 a.m., there is a call that lasts for 1 minute and 12 seconds. 12:07 a.m., Charlie to Katie, that lasts for 1 minute and 32 seconds. 12:34, Katie to Charlie, 53 seconds. 1:02 a.m., Charlie to Donna, no duration. The witness thinks it was maybe a misdial. 1:03 a.m., Charlie to Katie, that call lasted 19 minutes and 55 seconds. The morning of the murder, between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m., Wendy has a TV appointment in her calendar, which they point out was deleted. 8:09 a.m., there is a call from Wendy to Donna for 35 seconds. At the same time, Donna calls Wendy back with no duration, so it seems like maybe they were playing phone tag. 8:11 a.m., there's a text to Donna from Wendy. Best Buy just called me, but I told them to confirm with you. They're on their way over now to help you with the TV sets in your living room. 8:20 a.m., Wendy texts Charlie, "This is so sweet. By the way, that text was deleted." 9:04 a.m., there is a voicemail from Dan to Wendy. I have tried to improve the audio and uploaded it on the YouTube channel if you want to listen. It says, "Hey, Wendy, it's Danny. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Friday. Just wanted to let you know I was hoping to pick the boys up early this afternoon and take them swimming, and then have them ready for you around 4:30 or 5. If you can pick them up from me either at Truesdale or at the house, so let me know if that's okay with you. And also, I'd love to chat with you about Ben's situation for school and birthday stuff and all that. I'm going to be at the gym probably between 9:15 and 10:30, but happy to chat or meet with you. Maybe we can go for a walk at school or something like that. Let me know. Okay, bye." 4 minutes later at 9:08 a.m., Wendy tries to call Donna, and that duration is 34 seconds. At 9:12 a.m., there is contact between Charlie and Wendy for 29 seconds. 9:12 a.m., Wendy texts Dan, "Repairman at my house right now. I'm picking up the boys at 3, so your swim idea is a no-go today." Now remember, Wendy testified she did not listen to Dan's voicemail that morning and did not know his time frame he would be at the gym. This proves otherwise because Dan was proposing to take the boys swimming, and Wendy replies, "His swim idea is a no-go." For me, that was huge because it totally shows Wendy heard that voicemail. She would have known the time frame he was going to be at the gym. 9:13 a.m., Dan texts Wendy, "My day ends at 4:30 under our schedule, and you had them until 5 last week." 9:15, Wendy texts Dan because you needed to food shop. Dan texts back, "You weren't making them available until 5. Now, at the same time he sends this text is when he arrives at the gym. 9:18 a.m., Wendy to Dan, "If it was 4:30 last Friday, you should have told me that. Why tell me now?" Then at 9:19 a.m., a minute later, Wendy calls Charlie and they talk for 18 minutes and 17 seconds. 9:20 a.m., Dan texts Wendy because I was being nice. After the call with Charlie ends at 9:38, Wendy texts Dan, "Nice was fun while it lasted. See you at 4:30 p.m. at my house today then." 9:38, Charlie calls Donna, 30 seconds. 9:57, Charlie calls Katie. They're not sure if that call connected. 9:58, Katie calls Charlie, not connected. 9:58, she calls him again and they connect for 6 minutes and 46 seconds. 9:58 is when Sigfredo sends his last text before we believe he turned his phone off. 9:58 a.m., Charlie talks to Katie for over 6 minutes. 10:06 a.m., Charlie calls Wendy, the duration 11 seconds. We don't know if that connected or not. 10:07, Katie calls Charlie for a minute. 10:08, Katie calls Charlie again, 9 seconds. We don't know if that connected or not. 10:09 a.m., Charlie calls Katie for 5 minutes and 54 seconds. That is the last communication among anybody prior to the shooting. At this point, Dan is also playing phone tag with his family court attorney. They're setting up a time to talk for later in the morning. 10:34 a.m., that was the last outgoing communication from Dan. He was killed within a few minutes. The cell locations of Garcia and Rivera show them trailing Dan and then turning their phones off right before the murder. Then it shows them going back to Miami, and they have this all mapped out on screen. 12:18 to 12:19 p.m. after the shooting, Sigfredo gets an incoming call, but his phone was still off. But at 12:29 p.m., there are notifications being sent to Sigfredo's phone, which is a good indication that phone was powered back on. 12:30 p.m., Sigfredo calls Katie. As far as Wendy's locations after the shooting, 12:31 p.m. to 12:47, we know Wendy was on a phone call. That would put her on the phone from the time when she left home to being in the area of the liquor store. Also, between 12:35 and 12:45, this is the time frame Wendy encounters the roadblock. And then at 12:49 p.m., we have that liquor store receipt. They bring up the fact that after seeing the roadblock down Trescott, Wendy didn't call Dan or the preschool to see if any of them were okay. There was no call to 911 or law enforcement. Now, they point out that the restaurant Wendy was meeting her friends out had a lot of liquor stores in the area that would have made much more sense for her to go to, as opposed to the one that took her by Trescott. In fact, it took 9 more minutes for her to go where she did versus literally a stone's throw away from a liquor store to the restaurant. 5:21 p.m., Katie texts Charlie, "How's work, hun?" Charlie responds, "Been busy." 6:01 p.m., Charlie texts Katie about to start a big case, and Katie says, okay. 6:46 p.m., Sigfredo and Rivera are back in South Florida. They stopped at an ATM. 7:04 p.m., this is when Wendy calls Donna from the police station. Then at 7:12 p.m., Donna texts Charlie, "Call us ASAP." Around 8 p.m., Donna and Harvey's phone are pinged, leaving the Miami area and traveling north. At 8:22 p.m., Katie to Charlie, "Still at work?" Charlie says, "Just finishing, not feeling good. Maybe we can just hang at my house." At 8:35 p.m., Donna pings in the North Miami area. If you remember, Katie testified that Charlie told her Donna and Harvey had just been to his house before she got there to drop off the money. This next part got me a little confused because of all the times, but let me see if I can make some sense of this. Essentially, the witness was saying that the estimated time it should have taken Donna and Harvey to travel from their first ping in South Florida to where they ended up at 10:53 p.m. should have taken around an hour and 4 minutes. Their actual travel time was 2 hours and 21 minutes, with a difference of an hour and 17 minutes. At 8:59 p.m., Donna texts Charlie, "Outside your house." 20 minutes later at 9:19 p.m., Charlie responds that he would be there in 10 minutes. Now, if you figure in that Donna texted Charlie at 8:59 saying she was outside the house, and Charlie says he would be there in 10 minutes, that should have put Donna staying at Charlie's house waiting on him for about 25 minutes. Charlie's phone pings that show him traveling towards home put him there between 9:21 and 9:40, and that fits within that time frame. From Charlie's house to where they were next pinged at 10:53, the estimated travel time from Charlie's would have been 48 minutes, but it took an hour and 54 minutes. So that leaves an hour and 6 minutes there unaccounted for. So the way he was able to get this 36 minutes is taking into account the text communications and the cell phone pings between Charlie, Harvey, and Donna, with her estimated to have been waiting outside his house between 25 and 30 minutes, which gave them the 36 minutes that Donna and Harvey are unaccounted for and quite possibly were just at Charlie's house during that time talking about obvious things. 11:56 p.m., Charlie to Donna. Did you get to your hotel okay? Donna responds, thanks for asking. We have it on MapQuest and should arrive at 1:25 a.m. Get some rest. We'll talk in the a.m. Her cell phone pings versus the travel time to the hotel is pretty close. The witness decided to drive the route from South Florida up to where that 10:53 ping happened. And this was done just this year on the anniversary of Dan Markel's murder, July 18th, and he did it at the same time Donna and Harvey did. To make a long story short, it just confirmed that discrepancy there where we theorize they were at Charlie's house. At 11:56 p.m., Charlie texts Donna, did you get to your hotel okay? Donna responds, thanks for asking. We have it on MapQuest and should arrive at 1:25 a.m. Get some rest. We'll talk in the a.m. Moving on to 10:12 p.m., Charlie called Katie that was not connected. 10:20, Katie calls Charlie for 2 minutes. At this point, she is at Sigfredo's house, but going to Charlie's from there. July 19th, the morning after the murder, Charlie is at home, and Katie's phone is pinged at 9:44 a.m., traveling south from Charlie's house to Rivera's house. Between 9:44 and 9:46, Katie is calling and texting trying to reach Sigfredo. 9:47 a.m., Katie calls a guy named Anthony who is a friend of Sigfredo's. 9:49, both Anthony and Rivera are trying to get a hold of Sigfredo. There are calls between Rivera and Anthony until 10:20 a.m., which at that time, Katie gets a call from Rivera, and they talk for 1 minute and 40 seconds. Katie is still trying to get a hold of Sigfredo at 10:31 a.m., and then those attempts stop. They explain Sigfredo dumped his phone in the early morning hours, which is why nobody could get him. That phone never returns to service at any point throughout all the records law enforcement has. 10:31 a.m., Katie and Rivera both are pinged at his house. 10:23 a.m., Katie is on the road to pick up her kids. They move into wiretaps, and that's what's going to come in this afternoon. This episode may be late, by the way. I do have to go to the hospital and sit with my grandma. He explains what wiretapping is, how it works, the equipment they use, and also says there are guidelines like how long they should listen, when they can come back to monitor ongoing conversations to see if the subject has changed to anything of interest. That is called spot checking. They tapped Charlie and Katie's phones. They noticed that at one point on the wiretaps, Charlie referred to Sigfredo as Tudo to Katie. And despite what Charlie says, he knew Sigfredo's nickname was Tudo. As far as the bump, that was April 19th, 2016 at 1:47 p.m. Donna's first call after the bump was to Charlie. It was 20 minutes later at 2:09 p.m. And they note she only called Charlie, not Harvey, not Wendy. They move on to when Donna was detained and charged on November 15th, 2023. Her cell phone was taken that day, and they did a Celebrite extraction. It says in her phone there was evidence Donna and Wendi talked about Charlie's trial and the verdict as it was happening. And at this point, there was a call for a sidebar, and then they took a very long lunch break. I think a juror had a need. So I will update the after lunch session later this evening. That is it for now. Hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon.